101 seconds. 1 minute and 41 seconds. Thomas Massie held up a single sheet of paper. Bank transfer records, Federal Reserve wire confirmation, February 16th. And asked 4 questions that silenced the entire chamber for longer than anyone in that room had ever witnessed. Who got paid? Mr. Miller. Who received $890 million from the DHS Emergency Operations account? Who authorized this transfer? And who signed off on routing it through 3 offshore intermediaries before it reached the final recipient? Miller's hands went flat on the table. His attorney reached for his arm. Too late. The document was already on every screen in the room, and Massie was not done asking. To understand why those 4 questions produced 101 seconds of silence, you have to understand what Massie was carrying when he walked into that room. Not a folder, a locked metal briefcase. Security tried to scan it. Massie showed them a federal court order authorizing the transport of classified financial documents. They let him through. Miller had no idea what was inside. His legal team had no idea. The first 35 minutes were exactly what Miller expected. Contract bidding processes, vendor selection criteria, budget allocation procedures. Miller gave his prepared answers, smooth, confident. He checked his water glass twice but never drank, a small tell. He was more nervous than he looked, but he thought he was managing it. Then Massie took the microphone. Mr. Miller. Massie's voice was quiet, calm. The kind of quiet that makes everyone lean forward to hear better. I want to talk about a wire transfer that occurred on February 16th of this year. Do you recall authorizing any large financial transfers on that date? Miller's expression did not change. Congressman, as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, I am not personally involved in day-to-day financial transactions within the Department of Homeland Security. Those matters are handled by. I am not asking about day-to-day transactions. Massie opened the briefcase. I'm asking about $890 million. The room went silent. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next sentence. The heavy, thick silence of people who just heard a number so large they are not sure they heard it correctly. Massie pulled out a single sheet. Federal Reserve wire transfer confirmation. He held it up to the document camera. The image appeared on screens throughout the chamber. This is a Federal Reserve wire transfer record, he said. Date, February 16th. Originating account, Department of Homeland Security Emergency Operations Fund. Transfer amount, $890 million. Receiving account. He paused. International Development Solutions, LLC. Registered address, Cayman Islands. He set it down, and at the bottom of this authorization form, in the section marked Executive Approval, there is a signature. He zoomed in on the document. Your signature, Mr. Miller. A murmur went through the gallery. Journalists were already typing. Miller's lead attorney was writing something frantically on a legal pad. Massie was not waiting. Now, Mr. Miller, I know what you're going to say. You are going to tell me this was a legitimate procurement for border security operations. You are going to say International Development Solutions is a vetted contractor. You are going to claim this falls under emergency authorization protocols. He paused. So let me save us both some time and show you what I found when I started asking questions about this company. He pulled out a second document, International Development Solutions, LLC. Incorporation date, January 28th. He looked up. 18 days before this transfer, the company that received $890 million from DHS did not exist 3 weeks earlier. The murmur became louder. Miller's jaw tightened. Just barely. But it tightened. Massie continued. Registered agent, a corporate services firm in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. No physical office. No employees. No website. No Websys history. No prior government contracts. He set the paper down. Mr. Miller, you signed off on transferring $890 million to a company that was created 18 days earlier and has no verifiable business operations. Why? Miller leaned forward. Congressman, without reviewing the full procurement file, I cannot speak to the specific vetting process. Emergency authorizations require expedited timelines, and there are established. I said no employees. Massie's voice cut through. No employees, Mr. Miller. 0. I subpoenaed the corporate records. International Development Solutions has never filed payroll taxes, never registered a single employee with any government agency, never submitted a W-2. He pulled out a third document, but they did do one thing. 3 days after receiving $890 million from DHS, they transferred the entire amount to 3 different accounts. $297 million to an account in Switzerland, $301 million to Singapore, $292 million to the British Virgin Islands. All three accounts registered to beneficial ownership trusts, which means the actual owners are protected by international secrecy laws. He looked at Miller. $890 million. Taxpayer money. Emergency fund. Transferred to a shell company, then immediately moved offshore to hidden accounts. And you signed the authorization. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Who got paid? Miller did not answer. His attorney whispered something. Miller shook his head. He was going to try to handle this himself. Congressman, his voice was measured. Emergency procurement during a national security crisis requires flexibility. The vetting process for. I am going to stop you. Massie held up his hand. Because I have not shown you the best part yet. He reached back into the briefcase. This took some work to obtain. A federal subpoena, a 3-month legal battle, and 2 days ago a federal judge ordered the disclosure of these records. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. A bank routing analysis prepared by the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. He opened it. This report tracks the 3 offshore accounts that received the $890 million. And here's where it gets interesting. All 3 accounts made secondary transfers within 72 hours, smaller amounts, but very specific amounts to very specific recipients. The Swiss account transferred $47 million to a law firm in New York. That law firm represents 4 individuals currently under investigation for immigration fraud. The Singapore account transferred $89 million to a consulting group in Washington, D.C. The consulting group is owned by a former DHS official who left the agency in January, 1 month before this transfer. And the British Virgin Islands account transferred $156 million to a private equity fund. The managing partner of that fund, he looked up at Miller as your former deputy from your first term in government. The room erupted. Not shouting. Worse. The low, angry rumble of people realizing they are watching something much larger than they thought. Massie let it build for 5 seconds. Then he raised his hand for quiet. Mr. Miller, $890 million left DHS, went to a shell company, was split into 3 offshore accounts, and within 72 hours, portions of that money ended up with a law firm defending immigration fraudsters, a consulting group run by your former colleague, and a private equity fund managed by your former deputy. He set the papers down. Who got paid? Miller's hands were pressed flat on the table now, knuckles white. That small muscle near his jaw was twitching. His attorney was on his feet. The chairman's voice cut him off. Your client can answer the question. But Miller did not answer, and that is when the silence started. Massie looked at his watch and began counting out loud. 10 seconds. Miller's attorney tried to whisper something. Miller pulled away from him. 20 seconds. 30. The stenographer stopped typing and just stared. 45 seconds. A journalist in the back dropped a phone. The sound echoed through the chamber. 60 seconds. 1 full minute. The chairman leaned into his microphone. Mr. Miller, you are under oath. You will answer the question. Miller opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it. Massie kept counting. 70, 75, 80. At 90 seconds, a full minute and a half, Miller's second attorney stood up. Mr. Chairman, we need to request a brief recess to consult with our client. Denied. The chairman did not hesitate. The witness will answer now. Massie hit 101 seconds and stopped counting. Mr. Miller, he said quietly, almost gently. 1 minute and 41 seconds. That is how long you have been sitting here in complete silence rather than tell this committee who received $890 million in taxpayer money. That silence is an answer. It is just not the one the American people deserve. He gathered his documents. These bank records will be entered into the congressional record today. Every transfer, every routing number, every offshore account, every secondary recipient. The Treasury Department has already opened a criminal investigation into this transaction. The Finzen report has been referred to the FBI. He looked at Miller one final time, and those names, the law firm, the consulting group, the private equity fund, those names are not redacted anymore. They are in the public record as of right now. So even though you refuse to answer, the documents answer for you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. The hearing technically continued. Other representatives asked other questions. Something about border technology, something about staffing levels. None of it mattered. Nobody was listening, because Thomas Massie had just asked the question that Stephen Miller could not answer, and 101 seconds of silence had told everyone in that room exactly what they needed to know. What Massie built in that room followed the same architecture he had used before, not accusation, docusation. The wire transfer confirmation showed the amount and the destination. The incorporation record showed the shell company was created 18 days before receiving it. The FinCEN report tracked where it went next. Each document foreclosed a path of escape that the previous one had already closed. By the time Massie read the secondary transfers aloud, the law firm, the consulting group, the private equity fund, each connected to Miller's own professional history. There was nowhere left to go. The money had a trail. The trail had names. And the names were now in the congressional record. Miller's silence was not a legal strategy. It was the sound of a man standing at the end of that trail with no explanation that did not make things worse. Emergency procurement does not route through shell companies incorporated 18 days earlier. Emergency funds do not move to beneficial ownership trusts in 3 countries within 72 hours. And emergency authorizations do not carry secondary payments to former deputies and former colleagues in law firms defending fraud cases. Each of those facts, individually, might have an innocent explanation. Together, they form a pattern that 101 seconds of silence confirmed rather than contradicted. The documents are in the record. The wire transfer, the incorporation date, the offshore routing, the secondary payments, the FinCEN report, the names, all of it permanent, all of it public, all of it carrying the same 4 questions forward into whatever investigation follows. Who got paid? Who authorized it? Who signed off on routing it offshore? And who, when given 101 seconds to answer any of those questions under oath, chose silence instead? The briefcase is closed. The record is open. And $890 million is still waiting for an explanation that Stephen Miller, in 1 minute and 41 seconds, could not provide.